They thought they could outsmart me, sending fake cops to roll up on my driveway and steal my Porsche, acting like they had a badge and authority, all because one bitter HOA Karen couldn't stand that I didn't bow down to her rules. But what she didn't know was that I'm a U.S. Marshal, trained to see through lies, trained to deal with criminals who think they're clever. What followed was a night of deception, pursuit, and a showdown that no one on the block will ever forget. Subscribe now and stay tuned, because you're about to hear how a petty feud turned into a takedown that belongs in a movie. It all started when I moved into the neighborhood, a quiet suburban cul-de-sac where everything seemed picture perfect at first glance. Neatly trimmed lawns, matching mailboxes, identical trash bins lined up like soldiers on pickup day. The kind of place where people wave but don't really know your name. And at the head of it all was the Homeowners Association president, a woman everyone whispered about but never confronted, Karen, a middle-aged tyrant with a permanent scowl and an iron grip on every meaningless rule you could imagine, from the shade of curtains in your living room to the type of flowers you planted in your yard. And the first time she came knocking on my door I knew exactly what kind of problem she was going to be, because she didn't just ask politely, she demanded, pointing at my Porsche parked in the driveway like it was a sin against the universe. "We don't allow vehicles like that here, it lowers the aesthetic," she hissed, like my car was somehow an offense to her personal kingdom. And I told her, calm but firm, that the Porsche was my property, I wasn't violating any city law, and she had no right to demand where I parked it. And from that day forward I became her target. At first, it was passive-aggressive letters stuffed in my mailbox, citing fake HOA bylaws that didn't exist, warnings about fines she had no authority to enforce. Then it escalated to complaints about noise when my engine revved, even though I never drove loud after hours. Then came the trash bins, accidentally knocked over, and even footprints across my lawn like someone was trying to provoke me. But I didn't take the bait. I just kept documenting everything quietly, because if there's one thing being a marshal teaches you, it's patience. You wait, you watch, and eventually your opponent makes a mistake. The mistake came one Saturday night, when I noticed a black SUV slow rolling past my house not once but 3 times, tinted windows, no plates on the front, then finally pulling over 2 houses down, and out stepped 2 men in dark tactical gear with badges on chains, moving with a swagger that was almost believable. But the second I saw their body language I knew they weren't cops. No situational awareness, no communication patterns, just 2 thugs wearing surplus gear, and they walked right up my driveway like they owned the place, one of them shining a flashlight at my Porsche, the other tapping the badge clipped to his vest and barking, "Police, we need to impound this vehicle, stolen plates reported," and my neighbors, curious but terrified, peeked through blinds while Karen herself stood across the street pretending to water her flowers, watching with the smugness of someone who thought her plan was about to succeed. I played along, stepping out in sweatpants, yawning like I'd just been woken up, asking what the problem was, and one of them shoved a fake clipboard in my face, paperwork that looked official at a glance but was riddled with typos, wrong seals, and no case number, and that's when I decided to tighten the net. "Sure. Let me grab the spare keys," I said, walking back inside, but instead of keys I grabbed my badge and my sidearm. Heart steady, because I'd dealt with drug cartels more professional than these clowns, and when I stepped back out, they were already trying to jimmy the lock on the Porsche door with a Slim Jim, impatient, reckless, and I raised my voice loud enough for the whole block to hear, "U.S. Marshal, drop the tools and step away from the vehicle," and the look on their faces was priceless, a mix of shock and panic, because suddenly the prey they thought they were hunting turned out to be the predator. One bolted instantly, sprinting down the street toward the SUV, while the other froze like a deer in headlights, stammering excuses about a mix-up, but I had my weapon trained and my badge visible, shouting commands, neighbors now pouring onto porches with cell phones recording, and Karen across the street. She dropped her hose and stumbled backward like she'd seen a ghost, realizing her little scheme had blown up in public. I cuffed the one thug while calling dispatch with my free hand, giving a quick rundown, license plate, suspect description, direction of travel, and within minutes local units were tearing through the subdivision with sirens, boxing in the SUV at the main exit, dragging the driver out while he kicked and cursed. By then, the guy the first had on my lawn was sweating bullets, trying to cut a deal, blurting out that the lady paid us cash, before I even asked, and that was the final nail in Karen's coffin, because she was too arrogant to cover her tracks, too convinced that her petty-wa throne made her untouchable. I walked straight across the street, the thug still cuffed on my lawn, neighbors filming every second, and I said to Karen, "You might want to call your lawyer, because conspiracy to commit grand theft auto with impersonation of law enforcement is going to keep you busy for a while." And she stammered, red-faced, insisting she didn't know those men, but the moment one of them shouted, "You promised us 10 grand." The entire block gasped. The fallout was swift. Real officers arrived, taking both men into custody, evidence bagging their fake badges, and when they pulled Karen aside for questioning, she completely unraveled, threatening lawsuits, screaming about property values, until finally she was stuffed into the back of a squad car, still shrieking. You'd think that would be the end, but the real twist came a week later when my office dug deeper into the 2 imposters and discovered they weren't just random thugs. They were part of a larger crew running a scam operation across multiple states, stealing high-end cars with fake police credentials, and Karen had unknowingly tied herself into a federal investigation much bigger than a neighborhood spat. With her cooperation, forced, of course, after her arrest, she exposed connections to a chop shop network, and my case file thickened overnight, turning my WA nightmare into a career win, because not only did I shut down a petty tyrant, I also dismantled a criminal pipeline worth millions. But what made it sweeter was the shift in the neighborhood. Suddenly, the people who used to look down at their lawns and avoid eye contact were bringing me pies, shaking my hand, thanking me for cleaning up what they didn't have the courage to confront, and the Porsche. It sat gleaming in my driveway like a trophy, untouchable, a reminder that no matter how deep the pettiness goes, justice runs deeper. And sometimes justice doesn't come in a courtroom, it comes in the form of a U.S. Marshal standing his ground against fake cops sent by a bitter WA queen who thought rules gave her power, when in reality, power belongs to those who stand for what's right, no matter the cost.